It was.
So, can you remember like what in general he said about the whole thing and how he felt, or?
You know, I'm about, probably as bad as he is. You try to forget those things.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer, actually.
You like that. That's
Yeah.
what you do because life goes on. And you can't, if you dwell in the horrors of life, you're not going to be able to go on, you know.
Well, let's talk more about that real quickly here before we maybe change the subject. How did you feel about, again, your husband's the bravest of the brave, and you're right there with him. How do you feel about war in general, about ending the war with the atomic bomb, and
Terrible.
then just in general give us some kind of life wisdom, how it feels to be a kind of an American Navy woman.
Well,
And,
go back to that time. He never got shipped out again. He was stationed at Seal Beach in Long Beach. And when he did, I came home. I went down where first, and the people in Long Beach opened their homes to the families of the service people and let them sleep there, and some let eat. But I got a home that she had signs all over. I don't remember how much it paid. It wasn't very much, you know. It paid rent, but I couldn't eat there or anything. So I decided I needed to eat, so I went out looking for a job, and I'd never been a waitress. The first place I went into was Woolworths, and they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have any experience. So I kept walking down Main Street and right into Manning's store. And they had tables outside on the sidewalk and everything. And it was a coffee shop, but, you know. So I walked in and I said, "Is there a job?" And she sent me upstairs to this lady. I can still see her. And she talked to me for a few minutes, and she says, "Oh," she says, "you're a typical Manning's girl." She hired me just like that. I had no experience.
And this is right on the main street there in Long Beach?
Yeah, Long Beach at that time,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was Manning's. And everything, you know, was rationed. And what I did there, I was in the kind of like a kitchen nook where we served breakfast, and I served mostly breakfast. And this one gentleman would always come in, and he wanted oatmeal. And he always liked to slab of butter on his oatmeal. Well, that was against the law. You couldn't do that. But I did. I slipped him a piece of butter on his oatmeal.
Did he tip you extra?
No, it was rationed.
No, did he tip you for doing that?
No, nobody knew I did it.
Oh, okay. Not even the guy?
I got away with it.
Okay.
But he tipped me so good.
Yeah,
I
okay.
got the best tips that I even bought Frank a custom-made sailor outfit and myself a nice three-piece suit. And he'd always ensure that he was at my little spot, you know. But I got my food that way too, so it was okay. And then when Frank got stationed at Seal Beach, that's when I came home and got the car and loaded it up and drove down. And gas was rationed. They wouldn't give me gas to go that far. I didn't have that many tickets. But my father-in-law lived on the ranch in Turlock, and they gave them all the gas they wanted. So I knew if I got to Turlock, I'd get my tank filled. So in Modesto, I'm looking, and it's getting down to 0. And I pull into a service station, and I said, 1 gallon of gas. He says, "That's all?" And I said, "Yep, that's all. That'll get me there."
And you're driving by yourself?
Yeah, I'm talking about me.
Just no one's with you.
Huh?
You're on your own?
Oh, yeah, nobody's with me.
You're
No,
on
no,
your
no,
own.
I'm
Okay.
alone. I'm alone. And so I went down to the folks and loaded my car up with gasoline. And they were worried about me, you know, taking off early the next morning. And I didn't stop really until I got to Bakersfield and put gas in and had breakfast. And it was the old incline up, you know, to Tehachapi there. Anyway, I got up, and they had water holes. And I got up to the first one. It was steep, and I had a flat tire. And my car is loaded with stuff. So this gentleman in a car came by, and I asked him if he would please stop at the first service station and send someone back to help me. Truck drivers would stop. "Do you need help?" "No, this guy's going to come back and sending somebody down to help me." Nobody came. Finally, this old truck loaded with potatoes. The farmer and his son came along, and they were loading up with water too. And he changed my tire for me, and he wouldn't take a penny. He wouldn't let me pay him. I'd never forget that. And so I started in again, and over I went. And he went, what do you know, when I hit the first up there, here's that guy that I had said that asked him to help me, and he stuck. And I said, goodbye. And I went on. and I went all the way to Long Beach and down to a little place called Sunset Beach where I'd found a home in that, right on the ocean. Right, yeah. And she let me, she said it was my mother's little apartment in her house. And so it was really nice, and I had their laundry privileges and garage for the car, and they were Mrs. O'Neill, I never forget her. And we'd go out and swim in that ocean in the middle of the night, and the oil would be, believe it or not, oil would get on your bathing suits. Yeah, yeah.
Before the oil spills.
Yeah, they didn't think anything about it in the 1940s, you know. But we had a good time. Yeah.
So what year was this when you moved?
Well, 44, 45.
About 45?
45.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I found a nice little apartment in Seal Beach there, and I went into the post office one day asking about bonds to buy, and I said, do you have any, do you think there's jobs over at the Seal Beach at the Navy base? And he says, you don't want to go out there. You want to work for me. And he gave me a job in the post office. And I'd never been done it before. And I sorted mail, sifted out, and I worked the desk and everything, windows, and it was a fun thing. And I stayed there until we left.
Is that where you were when the war ended?
Huh?
Was that where you were when the war ended?
Yeah. We went down to Long Beach that night the war ended. And everybody was down there, you know. It's just like they show New York, but it was the same
Big
thing.
party there, too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So how did you hear?
Huh?
How did you hear about the war ending? Where were you?
All you had is a radio. And you listened to the radio. And, of course, it spread just like dynamite, you know. Everybody knew, you know. We didn't know at first about the bomb. We just knew it had ended. So we were elated for that. But, you know, I still think that bomb, it was the worst thing that could ever happen. Of course, they always, the thing was they saved many lives by doing it. And that's probably very true. I'm not doubting that, you know.
Sure. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have stopped the war and not had the bomb, if they just would have given up and said enough is enough? But no one ever would do that.
Well, I didn't hear you.
I was saying it's a shame that the Japanese just didn't realize it was time just to stop.
Yeah.
And go home and everything live in peace.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It, and of course, I don't think there had been rumors that they were building a bomb. I can remember that, you know, but I never thought that it would be anything that drastic or that dangerous.
That big.
Yeah, or scary. Yeah, it's.
So, did your husband stay in the Navy after the war?
He was discharged in February of '46. Got his ruptured duck. That's what they called it. And,
so you just keep going until today. Just keep talking until you reach today.
well, you want to get to today?
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, we came home, and I was pregnant when we came home.
The home was Seal Beach still?
I was pregnant at Seal Beach.
Okay.
Yeah. And Dick was born in September of that year. And in between, once we got home, they were selling the houses. And so Frank's mother sent us a card every day. I got a card from her every day saying, buy that house, buy that house. So they sent us some money and we bought the house, $3,400.
Wow.
And I had kept the rent going all the time we were gone because I knew that we wouldn't have a house to stay in if.
Now it's 3.4 million.
Yeah, there you go.
We just drove down there. It is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
What?
Down there on the it's beautiful down there on the coast of Southern California.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, keep going.
yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, we always had the dream of building our own house, and when I was down in Long Beach, I did a lot of surveying, and I had a binder full of ideas. So Dick was born in September, and in '48, then Bob was born. And my mother was visiting, and I was drawing the house plans for this house that we were going to build. But we didn't have any land. So guess who went out looking? Me. I went all over. And I headed to the east of Concord, really. Just this general area where I am right now, except a little further. And there's a little store up there, and I saw this man Baldwin. He was in the water district, and he says, "Don't buy to the right here. You go to the left. That's where the water is." So I went out looking, and we found 2 acres of walnut land, and I think, what did we pay for it? $22,000, I think. that was in Bob was born in 48. That was probably about 48, 49. Yeah. And we had 200-foot frontage, and the side road on the side had been used for years. It was just a gravel road. So we built this big long house, ranch house out there, and I drew all the plans. I put all the plugs in, sizes, everything. And when Frank laid it out, he said it was better than any architect. There was only one little corner was a 1/16 of an inch off, and all I had was a ruler and the back of a house plan, you know. And it turned out to be a nice big house.
Is it still there?
Yeah, still there.
And so what did your husband do after the war?
He was a carpenter.
Oh, okay. So he could go anywhere.
Yeah, Bonifacio Street, he worked there, but his big job was at Dana Estates out here. And he was a finish foreman out there. He could do anything with wood. He worked in the hospital part, and he worked all over in the Presbyterian church. He built that little chapel. Yeah. And so it was, anyway, then after we had Dick and Bob then, and then all of a sudden, 5 years later, here comes Jack. And then comes Mimi. I finally got a girl. Oh, wow, I got a girl. I thought that was it. 2 years later, I got Cindy.
Oh, wonderful.
So you have 5 altogether.
Yeah, I got 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
These stories are so much better than the stories of the oil tankers blowing up. Keep going. Just keep on going. We're getting better and better here.
It's getting better and better, huh? Well, it's going to get worse, too.
Oh, okay.
When Cindy was born, she was born May 26th. Well, actually, on that December, Frank got sick, and he got an infection, and they couldn't cure it. They gave him all kinds of antibiotics, and finally, I guess it did get better, but he never felt good after that.
Well, just a second. I'm getting some weird feedback, like a hum or something.
Maybe she touching the microphone a little bit with
I touched it.
watch.
Oh.
Just
Okay.
I'll shut it off.
Oh, I shut it
Sorry
off.
about that. Oh, no, I was getting
Did that do it?
yeah, it's quiet now.
It was actually picking up the sound of your watch.
Oh, oh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, okay, so your
Sorry about
husband
that.
had an illness that stuck with him. For the rest of
Take
his
it
life.
off.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty
So,
serious.
sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, go ahead,
Pick
please.
it up where you left off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, those
okay.
things happen.
Well,
Wow.
anyways,
Wow,
when
wow.
Mimi was born, she had what do they call it? Her hip. She had hip disorder, so I had her in braces, and that was a learning experience. And when Cindy was born, then on Sunday, I was over in Martinez at the hospital, and on Monday, Frankie could come in to see me on Sunday, and on Monday evening, he came in and he took a chair and he sat down, and that wasn't his habit. And I could tell he wasn't feeling good. Now he went home. Next morning, my sister-in-law came over, and she stands early in the morning. She's standing in my hospital door. I says, "Okay, which kid got hurt?" And she says, "Oh, they're all fine. I just brought Frank into the hospital." Well, make a long story short, he ended up with a kidney stone that had lodged behind his pelvic bone. They couldn't find it. So after Thursday, they decided it was time for me to go home, so they sent me home, and then when he did, then the stone moved. And once the stone moved, they realized what it was. There I go again, I better watch that hand. and he came up, so they sent him home right away then, and because they didn't get the stone. It was lodged and it stayed there. And he went back to work. It was a hot day in June. And he came home and had a beer. Well, he had only one kidney working. The stone was blocking the other kidney. And so that night, when he woke up in the morning, he was in terrible pain. So I ended up taking him back to the hospital. And they did surgery on him right away through a cystoscope to try to find it. And the doctor had warned me that it might be so big that it would go back up to the kidney, which is what it did. But when he pulled the catheter out, he snagged something in the bladder, and it was cancer. And he immediately got his other tools ready. He had them there and sterilized him, and it was attached just by a stem, he said, like an octopus. And it was ready to, was ready to attach to the wall of the bladder. And of course he removed it, and he got well. He didn't work all summer then. But the sadness of this whole story is that it took him 10 years to tell me how he felt when the doctor told him he had cancer. And he decided he didn't have long to live. And every day for 10 years he woke up thinking that was his last day. And if you can imagine what it did to him and what it did to me, it was terrible, and or to the children. My sadness was my children never got to know the man I married.
It's kind of changed, huh? Wow.
I was heading for Napa. It was that bad. I won't go into the details.
Well, thank you for telling
but
us that story.
Anyway, I
Very
walked.
meaningful to me too to hear something like that, and it makes me think about my job as a husband and how tough it is, and how I have to keep focused no matter what.
Yeah, I know.
It's
But
very difficult.
but you know, if he could have talked about it,
Yeah.
and he took out a new insurance policy 5 years later, and he was cleared, and he couldn't accept it,
Wow. Wow.
and that's sad.
It is sad.
And I don't know. To this day, I don't know why I walked out one night, but I did. I packed a suitcase and I walked out. And I was going to school then to be a nurse's aide. And so I had this friend in San Francisco, so I went to San Francisco that night. He says, "Come in, I've been expecting you." There were about 4 people that knew that there was trouble going on in the house, right? The priest even said, "I've seen it coming for a year." But nobody ever said anything to me, you know. Anyway, I stayed in the house till I raised the rest of the three children. Bob was already in the service, and Dick was on his he was down in Los Angeles in college at the university. So the older ones were gone. I just had the three younger ones. They were 10, 12, and 14 when I took over. And I stayed.
Well, it just this is just almost too much. But you know, with your husband going through the war
Yeah.
and the cancer thing, and it just does it. People, we're just people. We're
Yeah,
just,
I
we're
know.
just people.
Yeah.
And but maybe why don't you pick it up? I want to hear about your kids too, or just anything
It,
else.
it just that he
Yeah.
couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
He couldn't talk
that was
about
the
the
way people were
war.
back
He couldn't
then.
talk about the war. He
Yeah.
couldn't talk about his feelings. And this Steve Weir that wrote the book said that that's what they did.
Yep.
All that they interviewed, they became stoic or alcoholics or something. Well, he didn't do that, but he was stoic. He never said a word. And you know, that's a big burden to keep in your heart.
Well, what we found is that the only guys who survived to be this old for us to interview, we only interviewed the last year or two, just this, we call them the survivors of the survivors,
Yeah.
is with a wife. If they were married and you know they had someone like you to try and help them, I mean, I'm sure you helped your husband so much.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have been gone just like that if with something bad. So you kept him going, and that's what that's the only
That's very
key
true.
to life is you need that partner to talk to. You need that partner, don't you?
You need the communication.
There's a little noise. I
Yeah.
don't think it's a watch. I think there's kind
Yeah.
of feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
We got a funny little buzz again.
I'm going to take this watch off because I have a tendency to move that hand.
I don't think it's your watch.
Well, I'm going to.
Okay.
I have a tendency to do it, so we just take it out of there.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh yeah. We got an extreme.
Yeah, I got it.
Extreme hum here.
Come on.
Yeah, this one is humming.
So anyway, I went to work then too, as a nurse's aide, and
Did I get rid of it?
I stayed and raised the kids and told them
Wow.
that when they were all gone, I was working in Rossmore by that time, and I loved it. I loved working. It was great.
And what was your husband
But Frank kept
Yeah.
in touch with me all these years. But he married, and before he got married, he came over and talked to me, and he kept in touch all the time with me. You know, and I know his new wife didn't know it because she was not very nice to my children. That made me angry. You know, really. Even when she died, the children weren't mentioned. And he was so good to them, her kids. You know.
Oh, she had kids too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they were growing by that, you know, all growing. But it was tough. But you know.
Well, you didn't let that keep you down, did you? You went and got a job and took care of your kids, and let's pick it up with that part of it.
Yeah, the oldest one, Dick, is the one that really appreciates it. He really understands what I did, and I get a lot of praise from him. He really does, yeah. But it was something I always wanted to do. See, I always wanted to be a nurse. That was my children's nurse. So I figured, well, I was a children's nurse. I had 5 kids. I had an asthmatic. I learned a lot of stuff. But I've always enjoyed medicine, and I still do. It's still a fascinating subject, you know. And I retired from Rossmore, and Frank's wife Ruby died. Oh gosh, let's see, he's been gone 4 years ago, I guess. You know.
Well, give us some of the highlights of your kids' careers and what they do. Tell us about your kids and their careers.
Oh, you want to hear about the kids?
A little bit, sure. And then we'll kind of get back to your life here alone.
Okay.
And then how you got out to Port Chicago and all. I think that's an interesting
Okay.
story.
Well,
What you do for your
it was always in my life, I think, basically. Bob, when he graduated from high school, he went out to DVC to get all his books and everything. And that morning, the school was starting. He walks out of his bedroom with his arms full of books, and he says, "Mom, do I really have to go to school?" And I said, no, but I'll give you three choices. You can either go to school, go to work, or you join the service. And I knew he was interested in the service. He'd been working on that all time. And he says, will you take my books back to school? I said, okay. He went right down to the Air Force and was accepted immediately. And but he wouldn't be, that was in September, but they couldn't take him till January or February. So he went out to Port Chicago and got a job, and he was working out there. And I talked to him the other day about it, and I said, what did you do out there? And he says, well, I was just rolling all the ammunition, just like everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he said why he joined the Air Force was he always wanted to be a pilot. And he's retired now. And his son gave him a Christmas present where he got to go, I guess it's in Oakland or someplace. Anyway, he got to fly an airplane all by himself. The instructor sits next to him, but he's sitting in the pilot. He took the plane up and he landed it and everything, and he was in seventh heaven. He's always wanted to be a pilot. So he flies model planes now, and he's really good at it. Woo. So that was a big thing. Dick, he became interested in drama, the oldest one, and he started that in high school, and so he's still in that in Los Angeles, in Burbank.
Wow.
Yeah, and his wife is an actress too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so they're a lot of fun. And Jack has his own business. He's taken after his dad. He has his cabinet shop here in Concord. He's very good, man. He does a good job. And then Mimi, the daughter, doesn't speak to me anymore. She spoke to us all when Frank died, but after that she even stopped talking to Bob. She has some kind of problems. But she moved to Lincoln, so nobody has seen her since, but she's a beautiful girl. She was a homecoming queen in high school. She was
she's out in
really
Nebraska.
pretty, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then little Cindy, she got married and had two boys. And then she got divorced. So she went to school, and
You have
she's a land kid. Yeah, oh yeah. Jack has three,
Wow.
and Bob has two boys, and Cindy had two boys, and yeah, so how many did you count? Six, 6, 7, 8.
Seven.
Yeah, and